we are changing our approach. We are now having a social media approach where we are taking content to Instagram, making videos, or TikTok, going there, making 2-minute videos with news coverages, making it fun, but doing daily, doing it regularly and consistently to grow our reputation and our brand with that audience.
Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of our News Personalization Expert Talks. I'm Thomas Steisel, Personalization Strategist at Fummel, and I will be hosting this episode. Thanks for tuning in. During our expert talks, we're interviewing industry leaders focusing on modernizing the news digital experience. Today we have Mohan Gulati as our guest. Welcome, Mohan.
Hey, thanks, Thomas. Nice to be here.
We are very happy. We are very happy to have you in our podcast, Mohan. You are Senior Director for Digital Product Management and Delivery at TorStar, and also a thought leader on digital innovation and product design. So, as a starter, could you tell us more about what your job is all about and how you fit into the global Toronto Star organization?
Sure. So I fit into the world of digital at the Toronto Star, and the Toronto Star is one of Canada's largest news media outlets. And I have the honor of leading the product management team and the delivery team at TorStar and at the Toronto Star. We have a number of different publications. The Toronto Star is the most well-known brand that we have. And yeah, we work on all of our web products and our mobile app products.
So, at TorStar, you're serving daily news to millions of Canadians all over the country, which places you in a very central position when it comes to communicating about crises like COVID-19 these days. From that perspective, can you tell us how the news consumption evolved in Canada the last year?
In the last year, so if we look at pre-COVID, we were seeing already a lot of Canadians going online for news, about 48% or something like that. And I would say in the COVID era, in the 2020 year, we've seen, globally speaking, 47% increase in the overall consumption of news products and going to that as a channel to get informed. So we felt that also in Canada. We've seen huge spikes in our own consumption, especially when the waves hit. So the first wave was massive. We saw easily 25 to 40% increase in some areas, and then the second wave, and then we're kind of in the middle of a third wave. So we're seeing again a lot of consumption of COVID specific content, but then again, overall content increase in terms of consumption from year over year.
Very interesting, yeah. Which shows the importance of news in a democracy, right? To be a source of reliable content.
Yeah, no, we definitely, I mean, Toronto Star is a trusted source or trusted brand, right? So we know that people are looking for trusted news sources to get the content. In Canada, we're definitely seen as that, and it's not the leader in that, but we report on COVID. We put a lot of effort in our reporting on COVID during this time. Also, making sure that we hold our governments responsible and accountable for the actions that they're doing. There was a really good article we posted just around December. Actually, it was a letter to our government asking to do something about the elderly in the home care and the situation there, which has been absolutely disastrous in Canada. And we were able to see immediately a difference. The 2 days later, the premier of Ontario came online and started to make changes, and that's the kind of power that news media can have. So it's not just provide information, but also to impact society and make sure things are going in a positive way where you can have that influence, have that weight. We are a voice in Canada and particularly in Ontario, and that's really important.
Amazing.
Yeah,
And regarding that rise in consumption, do you consider this as a sustainable trend? Do you think that people kind of discovered how they could consume news in a digital way? Do you think this will stay in the future?
I think there's an overall rise, right, Thomas? So when it starts off, the spikes are spikes. They're definitely increases related to the content and what's happening in the world today. But overall, yes, I think there's been an increase in adoption. So I'll give you an example with what we call professionally baby boomers or Gen Xers. Um, the amount of the demographic shows and the numbers show, let me look it up. I have it here actually in front of me, that more and more of them are coming online. Actually, there's less of a difference. So I think 51% of internet usage online in 2020 are now by Gen Xers and baby boomers. And the average time that they were consuming in 2020 was 2 hours and 29 minutes versus 1 hour and 54 minutes in 2019. So the overall adoption to digital by this segment of society has increased tremendously. Whether it's if you think about online grocery shopping or banking online or whatever it is, and that's translating also to news media to consumption. There's a big push towards mobile. Huge adoption of mobile as from the society as well. So we're seeing, and I believe that it will continue to sustain, just not at the same level. And then there's an effort, right? How do you make sure that you are doing the right things and learning to retain that audience and that consumption?
Sure, yeah, amazing figures, right? So it's
Yeah.
just doubling the attention time from that segment. Wow, that's amazing. And yeah, talking about that segment, so how do you approach readers below 30, let's say? Do you have specific experiences for them?
Um, so I'll start off by just talking about this demographic, what we've learned. We've done a lot of like user research on the under 30, actually under 18, to be more specific. But we have definitely honed in on the under 30 as well. And when you look at that, again, I'll throw another number out. 71% of media consumers are in this age bracket, and they look for their news from digital sources, right? So going back to my number, we know 69% of people worldwide use smartphones. And this audience is no exception. In fact, if anything, that's where they go. But what's interesting is you have to go where they're going. So they're going to a lot of the platforms, social media platforms, to start to pick up their content. A lot of them look at news as a source of entertainment, actually, and the amount of content that they're consuming, the size of the content is very bite sized. I like to call it bite sized. So it doesn't need to be these long lengthy articles. The time to actually invest and read this is limited. So Thomas, the answer in short is we are changing our approach. We are now having a social media approach where we are taking content to Instagram, making videos, or TikTok, going there, making 2-minute videos with news coverages, making it fun, but doing daily, doing it regularly and consistently to grow our reputation and our brand with that audience.
That is super interesting. So yeah, indeed, something that can define that new audience, right, is the attention span that they have. Huh? So you just explained it. They're jumping from one app to the other. They have like literally 5 seconds to offer you. Um, while, of course, for your business, it is key to retain them on your channel, right? So I guess there is a contradiction here in willing to keep them on your channel, on your app, but also, yes, serving them with news on other channels like TikTok. So how do you deal with that conflict?
I don't see it as a conflict, right? So we're a very customer focused organization. So the way we look at it, the customers are the readers are on platform like TikTok or they're on Instagram. More important is to create that brand awareness to become that trusted source, especially in an age bracket that's growing up and going to eventually change how they consume their habits. We want to be the brand that they know, that they relate to and come to. So right now our strategy is really just create awareness, go where they are, not worry too much if they're coming into our apps or into our products or not. But instead they know that, hey, if I want to find out what's going on, the stars got the best dashboards. So let's go, on COVID, or they'll cover interesting insights. Their investigative journalism is super, relevant and current. Going back to that local play, right? They understand that, yeah, I can go and read from some world organization what's going on, on these global things. But if I want to find out what's going on locally and in my area, the stars where they come.
Mohan, you said that they see news as an entertainment right now. And
Yeah.
that's funny because when you talk about digital product creation, then I think we have a lot to learn from the entertainment business, right? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the clients like Netflix and Spotify and so. Um, what can we learn from these platforms in the way they provide entertainment if we want to see news as an entertainment also?
So, I mean, when you think of entertainment, you obviously start thinking of the streaming services, whether it's Netflix, whether it's Disney Plus. I think unbelievable 50 million people they got online like in within 6 months of the pandemic. It was huge, right? Like Disney Plus has done a great job. But if you think about the medium that they're coming to consume, is video, right? Like I think crazy number, like 67% of global news consumers now watch online video news, right? It's massive. So there's a push there. There's also like this, I think it's more in Europe actually than in North America, where augmented reality is becoming something that millennials will look at, right? So it's like we're starting to see that you have to think of how you deliver news differently. And the overriding thing that we're focusing on right now, that we're learning from the entertainment industry, is personalization, right? So like Netflix does a really good job when you come on. You've got your tailored recommendations. If my wife goes to her home screen, it'll be different than my home screen, right? It's all very tailored and catered to your preferences and what you like. And that's what we need to learn from that industry, right? How do we become personalized one-to-one, both from a passive direction, but also from a customization or an active direction, right? So both of those need to be considered and have to be factored in, because um, I will go to the place that serves me content that's the most interesting to me. And that may not be the same content that Thomas is interested in, right?
For sure, yeah. Can you elaborate a bit on how you communicate about personalization internally? Is it a technology trusted by the majority?
Yeah, I mean, the technology of personalization is one part of the story, but it's also the understanding of how we achieve personalization is really important, right? So understanding that we need to build up first party data, we need to understand user behavior both on our site. The reliance on third party data is disappearing. So internally, we talk about that from a technology point of view. We talk about things like dynamic journeys and what needs to be happening in real time as somebody's on our sites, and what does that mean, and how do internally, how do we feel comfortable about that. Again, we talk also about like what I call passive versus active experiences. So passive experience being those experiences where we don't ask you for input, but based on your behavior, we'll give you a certain experience on the site. um, an example is you're reading a lot of this. We've got a great hockey team. So you're coming, you're reading a lot of hockey news. We know that about you. And all of a sudden your feed and your homepage starts showing you more content around that, right? Or if we're going to offer up a newsletter, that newsletter may be something that is based on your interest on sports. So we will use that information to give you what we call passive experiences, where you haven't actively asked for it, but we've known that this may be something you're interested in. And people look at that generally like in a positive way, because it's, hey, that's what I'm looking for. I don't have to go searching for it. Discoverability is easier. The relevance is better. Then there's the whole part about active personalization, and some people call that customization, right? That part of the journey for us is just at its infancy. We're starting to think about what that means. Taking the sports analogy again, if you come to the site and you're a big fan of the Toronto sports teams, then allowing you to customize your experiences on the site to be about your local sports teams that you're interested in versus maybe um, you know the team that's not so much of interest to you, right? Which you would get otherwise if we didn't use that. But that's active. There's an action that the user has to use. We're doing the same thing with like local content. So we allow people to decide, actively set where they want to get local content from. And that's an interesting problem if you think about it, Thomas, because you work in one place, you live in another place, and you may have family in another place, all within a 25-minute distance. But the news can change very local based on that. And you want to get all three of those sources, you should have a way to do that. And that's customization for us versus something that is like, we could use a postal code or we could tell you that you're in this area. Like that's passive, right? So very different choices and user experiences and features that we create based on that.
It's no surprise that when talking to a Canadian company, the example will be hockey, right? So you really fit into the cliche. So
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember being the lone Canadian in Austria, Vienna, cheering the Canadian team at the International World Championship. So
I'm
we're
sure that will be refreshing to our worldwide audience to to hear
that's right.
where the focus is for Toronto Star. Like provide relevant hockey news. That's all we need to do.
Well, it's we're a big fan of the basketball too and baseball, but definitely hockey is a cliche that we have and we are very passionate about it.
I can imagine, yeah. But that's very interesting what you're saying. So really trying to um, incorporate both passive information, so from behavior, I imagine from what you're doing, but also active information, right, given by the readers. Do you also incorporate in there business guidelines to promote certain topics more than others, or to give a way for your newsroom, your journalist, to also influence what will be promoted on the homepage, for example?
So that's an interesting question. Absolutely. We have two schools of thoughts. And one school of thought is we definitely want to make sure that our editors have a voice and create, that's our brand. Readers connect with the people that are writing things. So we want to make sure that they have a voice, they have a place and a very prominent one on our homepage. But then it's also very important to understand, even within a certain, we call them containers on our homepage, you know, some of those containers are personalized, even though they're on a topic like politics or they're on a topic like, leisure or um, coronavirus or whatever it is. We have the notion of also personalizing that, right? And making that. So there's always going to be a balance. And there's also going to always be a place where like opinions are going to be, that's going to come from our editors. That's going to be absolutely from us. Top news, breaking stories, that's going to come from our editors. Investigative journalism, again, we're going to make sure we give the right spotlight to our editors to showcase the information that we believe is relevant to our larger audience, right?
Yes, so you're curating your news depending on the container, right? So certain container will use more personalization, others will use more manual curation.
Yeah, so there's a number of different. If you look at various news sites, there's lots of different schools of thought. One is one where it's like a stream of news, and the homepage is just like a stream. You can go to many sites, and then there are sites where they're still very structured and still this is the let's call it the editor's picks, for lack of better words, and then there's kind of various themes or sections that you go to, right? And those you kind of highlight the most current but also most relevant. And now we're adding that extra dimension of personalized content within those containers, right? So it's not just that, within politics, you could be following a lot of different things, but maybe you really only like to read politics about, your local area. Again, that's something that we take into consideration, how we serve that to you to find that.
So, do you imagine proposing a slightly different homepage to every single TorStar reader?
What's happening today? It's already happening through that experience that I just described. I think the experience on the homepage will definitely be tailored and more personalized and customized, to be honest with you. It will also take into dimensions like, um, where you are, what you're doing, what time of day is it, which day of the week is it. Based on that, we should be responding. And this is no different than what you did in newsprint, right? So when you had, the Saturday paper for us at least was, like this thick, right? You got all this. Why is that? Because people have more time on the weekend to consume content and they want to consume other kinds of content. Whereas, certain days of the week you do, and there's science around even like how much advertising you put into it and all that. So we think about all those things and how do you bring them out into digital experiences as well, right? Not just, what used to happen on the print side and still does to a certain extent, but that thoughtfulness and that deliberate thinking needs to also happen online.
I see what you mean. Yeah. So, really trying to transcribe that good old newspaper plus coffee experience into a more digital friendly way.
For
And
sure.
I hear that you have some experience already. Can you tell me more, perhaps, on the challenges that you see towards the future in always refining that personalization approach?
Um, it's an interesting way of phrasing it. The challenges. Um, there has to be a right mix, right? Because so let me go back to a good story. Like you talked about the coffee in the newspaper, right? So as you know, some of my best memories of seeing my father reading the newspaper with coffee, right? Like we all have
Isn't
that. And
another
also
cliche?
like, but also if you think about like the Saturday morning experience, like while dad's reading the newspaper, um, other people are grabbing certain parts of the newspaper. Sometimes they grab, in my case, I grab the comics or the sports section, right? Like I start reading. So, and dad's reading the business and the frontline headlines, and and mom's also like grabbing different things that she wants to read. And sometimes you're waiting for somebody to finish something, right? Those kind of things bring into account complexity that needs to be contemplated also to bring online. I think those are things that we haven't quite, you know, cracked the nut, if you will, because how do you create that real time social aspect of something like what was happening, as just described? How do you do that? Like today, when I say social, people think, oh, I share things online. Well, okay, but how do I experience it together in a way that, and you can start to see things are happening, there are changes, like technology are introducing new notions and mediums to connect with people in real time and create experiences. A good example is like Clubhouse, right? Clubhouse has come on the scene, and people are, yes, we're all stuck and locked at home, and therefore we want to talk to people. So it's a great opportunity, but it shows us we can learn something about how you can connect with people that and are sharing similar experiences that you're sharing, and it doesn't matter where they're located. And I think that's exciting. If we can figure out what the formula is, what the secret sauce is to that, and then bring that to news and start to think of news as a more social thing again, whether your social circle is, Thomas and me talking about COVID because we both have different perspectives and different experiences, but there's a common theme to that. How do we identify that? How do we bring that together versus, hey, I don't know how to say this differently, very distinct, very disjointed experiences that happen today and very siloed experiences, right? And the danger of that is again, you start to get a one-dimensional perspective on things. So there's a lot of things to think about, a lot of problems still to solve.
I like the reflex that you have as a product manager to see an innovation and then try to think on how can I reproduce that experience on my specific domain, right? So taking Clubhouse, like how can I use that to improve my news consumption? So that's I guess something typical from people yet designing products in a digital way, right?
Yeah, it's a sign of, we in I think in the product world, we're always looking for problems to solve, right? And similar problems exist in different domains. And if you recognize that and you try to extrapolate that and transplant that, if you will, or transpose it onto your domain, there's a lot of learnings that you can take from that, a lot of insight, right? And I think being entrepreneurial and being a product person, you tend to look at ways and things that are happening right now that are changing and disrupting how we communicate, how we work, or what's happening. So to me, you have to be on top of that.
Sure. I had another question, Mohan, more on the organization side. So we discussed the fact that, yeah, personalization is some kind of cornerstone and that it will impact both the newsroom, but also the technology team, that you need to think about first party cookie, you need to have that infrastructure. Um, how is it to organize such a project? How do you make sure that you have the right people around the table and that you have a successful experience with personalization? Because it can also be a very difficult project to deploy in production, right?
Yeah, I mean, so the way organizations today are structured and the way we're structured, we work very, very, very closely with other departments. So it comes back to the values of the organization. We have a value that we call it the SCARF values. So it stands for being selfless, being collaborative, being agile, being result oriented, and then being focused, right? So taking those values in our organization and really living them every day forces us to do things like, okay, we're going to work with marketing, we're going to work with our data team, we're going to work within the product team and with our development team, and bring those groups together. Of course, the editorial team as well, right? And that focus and that collaboration is really critical. So let's take, for example, acquisition and thinking of dynamic experiences. We will definitely want to not do that on our own. We want to do that with um, an editorial presence, somebody who's looking at how content is performing and understanding the analytics behind that. We want to bring in our data team to make sure that we've got all the right technology and long-term thinking that's necessary, but also the signals that are important for us. And then we would look at marketing from a, hey, here's how we think of acquisition, here's how we think of retention. Here are opportunities to grow. If somebody's about to um, they're showing less interest and they're coming less frequently. How do we change that experience? That's a product minded thinking, right? So all of these things start factoring, and then we've got user experience that factors into it as well. So we start thinking of, messaging. How do we show dialogues? How do we show dialogues? Is it an underlay? Is it an overlay? I don't know what words they use today, but you understand what I'm trying to say. Like there's always a different UI element to think about as well as comes into factor that might change also based on what we know about you, right? So organizationally, it's a big kind of cross-functional team, but you want to keep the team nimble and you want to keep them small, right? So yes, we want representation, but we want to also make sure that they can react, because the beauty of technology is it enables us to do things faster and quicker, and we need to have teams that can, like, technology is real time. We as organizations need to figure out how we're going to be real time, right? How do we make decisions real time? How do we and be comfortable with making some mistakes, right? That's part of the agile mindset. Like not everything's going to be okay, and you've got to be okay with experimentation and learning and quickly, something's not going the right way. Understand that and then pivot.
That's a very interesting takeaway, right? So instead of waiting to be 100% sure about your decision, just dare to take a decision, and then yeah, accept that there might be some mistake along the way, but that's how you learn, right? Um,
Yeah, multivariate testing or A/B testing is a really good tool in any product person. So, you think about it from that perspective, um, you're going to always constantly be testing. You're always going to constantly be trying things out. Some of those tests are larger investments, like they take longer to build or to do, whilst others are much simpler and easier to kind of experiment on. Um, and yeah, if things go sour and you invest in it, it's okay, right? As long as it's measured, calculated, and it was a good, you took the learnings away.
Correct, correct. Continuously challenge status quo. Very interesting. Perhaps as a closing word, Mohan, there are people listening this podcast that are striving to start with personalization. To actually get something started. Do you have any advice for them on how they should think about it, given your experience with these kind of projects?
Well, the big takeaway for me is you need to start and rather than not start. So being bold enough to find an opportunity that is, if there's reluctance within the organization to move to this because of, whatever privacy concerns might be within the organization or whatever the concerns might be, I would say be thoughtful, be careful in terms of like how big of a place you want to experiment on, but find a place where you can experiment on. And that proves very useful. So, for example, for us, when we started doing personalization at the end of an article, right? With what content recommendations. Very subtle, very soft, but we learned how it's working. We understood what data we need to do to fine tune to get that to be better, and so on and so forth. So small steps, but then as you start seeing results and be very if you're not yet data oriented, orient yourself to the data, get your reports, get the right people in who are going to provide you with the metrics so you know what you're looking for in terms of success, right? So it's twofold. Be willing to like take that step and start small, but then also be internally very data minded and data or it's gonna shock you, right? Like whatever you start doing on personalization, if you're not looking at data, you're not going to understand what's really happening, and all your hunches and all of your guesses will be thrown out the window. It's just that's the way it works. It's like you think one thing's going to happen, and then you do it, and you find out, oh no, users and data is telling us that's not what's going to actually be of interest. So it's a very exciting world. And you'll soon be sucked into that. Before you know it, you'll be doing everything and talking only about personalization.
So brace yourself for the shock and then get started.
It was Thomas. I have to share this story with your listeners. We're very much thinking about For You as an area on our app, and we're about to roll that out within the next couple of months. No secret, these are things that many organizations are doing. And I remember having a conversation with our product manager who's managing that part of it, and she said to me, "Well, I've got enough of a roadmap for the next 6 months easily." I said to her, "You've got a roadmap for the next 3 years." It's that's the type of, once you get into it, you're in it. You're going to continue to kind of evolve it, and there's so much to learn and fine tune and tweak and opportunity there. So it's just a start, even for us.
An exciting journey. An exciting journey. All right. Thanks a lot, Mohan, for sharing all of that. I'm sure it will be very inspiring for all the people listening to this podcast. Wish you all the best with the upcoming 3 years of personalization projects and many more to come, I hope. And to all the others, I say we see you for the next episode. Thank you, Mohan. Bye
Thank you,
bye.
Thomas. Bye.